is the day after the primary. We have some that is obviously over. There are some races that may not be, but to help us break it all down and tell us what it all means is Chuck Coughlin from HighGround. Big surprises last night. Let's start there. Were you surprised by anything?
Yeah, weirdly, I was surprised that Vince Leach, who is a state senator in District 17, which is North Tucson, Southern Pinal County, actually won. Because traditionally you don't see a seriously non-MAGA candidate beat a MAGA candidate in a Republican primary. I was surprised by that.
And let's tell everybody he beat Justine Wadsack, but that issue, do you think the issue that came to light, she got pulled over by the police, don't you know who I am? She ended up losing the Fraternal Order of Police endorsement in a unanimous vote.
Yeah.
And now there's only a 911 vote separation right now, but that was enough to turn the tables.
It seems to be pretty steady, too. She had a bad run, just like Michelle Ugenti-Rita up here in her county supervisor race against Tom Galvin, had a bad run of publicity, and Tom Galvin won last night. Up here, the thing that I was, I wouldn't say I was surprised, but, you know, seeing Stephen Richard take it on the chin last night, again, that's something. And then we talked a minute ago about the Democrat sheriff race where Russ Skinner lost, and I was sort of surprised by that.
I wasn't surprised that in the Maricopa County Sheriff's race on the Republican side, I wasn't surprised that Jerry Sheridan won the nomination, but I was surprised at how wide the victory was because Frank Milstead had a lot of money, and Frank Milstead had huge name ID, has huge name ID in the county because of his position as DPS director. Right.
He was the DPS director under Governor Ducey. Had some issues there that probably most of those conservative Republicans were aware of. And then you get back to Sheridan being Joe Arpaio's guy, right? And so,
but Arpaio endorsed Milstead.
Yeah, I know. But, you know, he's still wearing the clothing. And then the other big surprise that I had, this was an equally big surprise, was in the Democratic race to succeed Ruben Gallego that Raquel Terán lost. You know, she was endorsed by Mark Kelly. She had all the Democratic Party support. She had all the union support. And Yasemin Ansari defeated her last night.
When you look at that, specifically that one, and also I live in CD1, the fact that Shaw won that, it looks like he won that. The difference there is in CD3, just like for Republicans in CD8, you win the primary, you win the general.
Yep, you're in.
So she will be, Ansari is going to be for all intents and purposes, is going to be the congresswoman from CD3.
Yep.
It looks like it's going to be Abe Hamadeh in 8.
Yes.
But Shaw in CD1 for the Democrats, and for all of you out there, I'm sorry I'm throwing numbers out so quickly, but for him to win that nomination, Schweikert easily wins his. I think that, in my opinion, if I were Schweikert, I would have been a lot more worried about Galan Woods.
Woman, yeah, I would have too. But David has to think about this. I mean, Shaw's always consistently, so for the listeners, Dr. Amish Shaw, emergency room physician, state legislator, very credible state senator.
I'm not knocking him.
Right. Works his tail off every single time. I don't know that I know a harder working guy. Succeeded last night. There'll be a narrative around him with his background. And my instinct is that it has the ability to pick up a Harris narrative there about something new, something different, that ethnic part of the Democratic Party. I think there's an opportunity there that he can more broadly narrate his campaign. But what he's never done is run a big media campaign. It's always been the door knocking that he's done. So this is going to be different for him. But it's not, I wouldn't call it a walk away for Schweikert.
No, I wouldn't either. But if I were Schweikert, I would rather face him than face Woods.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason,
totally agree with that.
Just because a widow of Grant Woods, he had a very prominent Republican, become Democrat, moderate in a district that's a third, and a third. Schweikert is not considered a right-wing candidate, and I don't know if Shaw is more of a left-wing candidate. But if it's right versus left, I would much rather have it be with someone that can stand firmly in the middle if I were going to be fighting against Schweiker.
And I think Shaw can occupy that space. He's got a lot of experience on water. He's got a lot of experience on healthcare. He can narrate that space. I agree with you. Marlene would have been she's a telegenic and great on camera. But just couldn't get through. I mean, this is the problem with like 5 or 6 candidates in a race.
Right.
How do you break through? What's your constituency? It's like what happened with Hamadeh. Hamadeh won a congressional seat literally with 5, 6, 7% of the vote. That's it. I mean, game over. Same with Raquel or with Yasemin. You win, a small percentage of an election of a competitive Democratic primary, and you're dancing in Congress.
So let's, and I guess this should have been the lead, but let's get to it. Kari Lake wins the nomination. She wins by a significant margin. Many people said it might not be significant enough, but Mark Lamb, which would have been expected, I'm sure you expected it, he won Pinal County, but he beat her in Pinal County 61-35.
Yeah.
And so I submitted earlier this morning that if Kari Lake wants to be successful, a big feather in her cap would be if Mark Lamb became an advocate. Not just she has my endorsement, not just I send out the tweet, but if he actually goes out and becomes a surrogate, does that help her?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's an incredible help if she can show the humility to do that, to go ask for the sheriff's support, go build a bench of people that are enthusiastic about her, because that's not there right now. There's not a lot of people in the Republican Party establishment that are enthusiastic about Lake. She got a very caustic email over the weekend from a major donor to all of her Christmas card list saying, you can't win. So she's got to do something to try and stitch that base together.
But it was a different race against Mark Lamb than it was against Karen Taylor Robson. Oh, yeah. It was not as caustic in the end. And even Robson came around last night and gave her endorsement. So
she did.
So it seems as if that fence has been mended, at least for the election's concern. Is it an easier sell to get Mark Lamb on board as a surrogate because it was not as caustic as that previous race?
I think it is easier to get because I know there was really hard feelings there after the last race with Karen. There wasn't any give in that, so I saw that last night. You would think that, Kari should think about reaching out to Karen reaching out to Mark and saying, can we put a bench together? We need to take this seat. That would be a really smart move on her part.
Who is a better help in the general election to Kari Lake, Trump or Lamb?
Oh, I think Lamb. In the
general.
Yeah, because he has the potential to add to the base. Trump's problem, in broadly speaking, is growing the base. Growing that base. He's great on negativity. He's great on suppression of Democratic enthusiasm. But can you grow support amongst unaffiliated voters and Republican voters outside that MAGA base? And I would think Mark, with his law enforcement background, his family background, his career as a sheriff, I think he'd have the ability to do that. Certainly Karen, if she's willing to engage, would help on the fundraising side, would help on the broad Republican base side with the Republican Senatorial Committee. There's got to be a lot of discussions going on about that.
In studio with me is Chuck Coughlin from HighGround, and I want to start off with money. Fundraising matters, but let's start with the Senate race. I think that Ruben Gallego has shown that he can raise a lot of money, and I think that in any race, with the ads he's running and things he's doing, he's off to a great start. But nationally, this is going to be one of the biggest races in the country. So do you think that the Lake campaign can compete with him in fundraising, but also, if not, the money coming in from the Republicans across the country, does it help her and level the playing field?
It can, if it comes in. I mean, she's still got to demonstrate that she can be competitive. And there's lots of opportunities across the country that the Senate's going to be, like, these people are going to be looking at. You got Montana, you have Ohio, that are that I think are perceptually more competitive right now than where she's at. And so, and it's a one seat majority. And so, you got to get two. You got to get two to flip the screen. And so, where do you put your resources and how do you compete? And so and I think the Democrats or the Republicans are looking at how successful Rubin is at also raising money and, the Hispanic electorate down here and the narrative that he's got going. That I think that's going to be daunting. But yes, she needs to raise national money, needs to get on the table, and she needs to have that. Like you said, having Lamb, having Karen help her with that as well, if she's gracious enough to lower the drawbridge.
When you look at that number, because polling shows him up around 4 points right now, what's that magic number that shows her as competitive?
I think she's got to get it to 2-1. She's got to get it in there and have a credible poll that shows that.
Okay. Let's talk about, I know this is near and dear to your heart. Let's talk about your push for an open primary.
Yeah.
When you look at let's start with Republicans. We got some Democrats we just talked about as well. But let's start with Republicans. Are there enough Republicans out there that are looking at results and saying, we're not confident that the candidates that won the primary are going to win the general? And for the Democrats, maybe the same way. Does this give more credibility? Are there people believing that your pathway to an open primary is the right one? And can you explain it so that people that haven't heard you talk about it can?
So, yes. So last night was a hard night for many Republicans, for people who can be elected in a general. Jack Sellers took it on the chin in the East Valley.
He sure did.
He's now going to have a very competitive race with Joel Navarro, the Tempe City councilman, who's a firefighter. We saw Stephen take it on the chin in that race, in Stephen Richards' race. And so you look countywide and you say, why are these things happening in a county that should be electing Republicans all the time? It's this narrative that we're caught in about election denialism. I believe that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but on the other side of that, what's strange about that is Stephen Richer lost.
Yep.
But if you look at Rachel Mitchell and the county attorney's office, she comfortably winning that race.
She didn't make the mistakes Stephen made. I mean, Stephen walked out of the debate and publicly said, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden.
Fair enough. That is fair enough.
And she was very disciplined about not engaging the ire of the MAGA movement. And she's got a good record as a law enforcement officer, and so she's a credible voice in that space. But she didn't run a bad campaign. So yes, there is. I said last night was a great night for what we're trying to do, because what we're trying to do is change the Constitution to allow to permit all voters to be treated equally. Every candidate, every voter. So if you're an independent, you don't have to collect 6 times as many signatures to run just on the general election ballot. You'll be on that first ballot. You'll be a choice. You can go say, who are my voters, and go campaign for those voters regardless of party, because we'll have lowered all the barriers to participation. Anybody can run. You can vote for anybody you want. You can sign anybody's petition that you want.
So the pushback, a couple of things, is this. Number one, let's go CD1 where I live.
Yeah.
You'd had 9 candidates on there to choose from last night. 9. So when you said earlier you only have to win a small percentage to win the nomination, which Shaw did.
Yeah.
Now you're talking 9 people.
But you've expanded the universe, too. You've expanded. And no Democrat, they all know in District 8, you're not going to get elected. A Democrat's not going to get elected in that district. So you open the primary up. So maybe some of those people come over and they support Ben Toma. Many people thought Ben Toma would be a great candidate, and they may support him. They may support other people, but they're as a candidate, then you can narrate to that portion of the electorate and say, I'm your guy or I'm your gal. And so it treats everybody the same. Everybody is on the deck, and so as a consultant, what I would say is I can go talk to a broader range of people and campaign with a broader range of people and ask them for their votes.
So the other pushback is we do have open primaries just to pick a side and get the primary in that side. Why should we upend the entire system because someone that votes like you wants to take a little from column A and a little from column B?
Well, that's the question is, are you okay with this current system that that forces you to vote a straight party ticket. Under what guise are we doing that? What law are we doing that? Where is that in the Constitution that says you have to vote a straight party ticket one way or the other? And why is that? That doesn't celebrate what America's about. America's about individual freedom and liberty and the Bill of Rights and our Constitution that celebrates the individual liberty of Americans. Why are we categorizing ourselves into these small little places which diminishes our freedom? I want to have a candidate that puts country first, that doesn't put party first. I'm a John McCain Republican, so I'm that guy. And so I want to see somebody who honors our commitment to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, civil liberties, civil rights. I want to have somebody that honors America and understands America as for what it is, that shining city on the hill. I want to have America be seen as the leader of democracies around the world. And I think we've lost that. I think we're no longer being perceived as that because we're putting down America all the time. We're a third world country, Mike, in a lot of people's views. I don't buy that narrative.
I can't wait for November to see how this all plays out and to talk to you. I'm serious about the results of this because I know that there are a lot of people. I get messages when we talk about this from people that absolutely agree with you and others that absolutely disagree.
Yep.
But every time we talk about it, there are more people that are open to this idea of what you're doing.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.